yesterday, and he is playing it today, and he started off 4-0. Now, we can get to the dissection of this list and all this stuff in a little bit here, but Kyle McDaniel playing a black-green rock deck with a lot of creatures in removal, as you have.
Yeah, the black-green deck, it's got some of the things you'd kind of see from the past. It's got that Scavenging Ooze, Deathrite Shaman, Lifebane Zombie thing. That sounds almost a little bit retro, but then new school stuff, Reaper of the Wilds, Polokronos, the World Eater, joins the party as well with some Heroes Downfalls and one whip, not to mention Thoughtseize.
Which is resolving right now for McDaniel. 2 Loxodon Smiters, 2 Plains. I like how he puts the Smiters with the lands. It's the cards that you cannot take. Options here are Fleecemane Lion and Selesnya Charm. Gerhart does have the necessary mana right now to be able to cast his spells. Does want one more green land so that he can play Advent of the Worm, assuming that he does draw one. But his deck list is 4 Experiment 1, 4 Elvish Mystic, 4 Fleecemane Lion, 4 Voice of Resurgence, 4 Loxodon Smiter, and 4 Boonsater. So the most efficient creatures on the curve to go along with 4 Selesnya Charms, which is obviously an incredibly flexible spell, 4 Advent of the Worm, and a little bit of Spice, and 3 God's Willing, and 2 Ajani Caller of the Pride.
The Lion goes away. I like that choice a lot. It's the most efficient threat that Ryan can drop down. Second land comes down, and we know we've got Smiters waiting in the wings.
Yeah, I mean, we could see a Selesnya Charm here on the end step just to make a 2/2 Vigilant token on the end step as well. Here's a Lotleth Troll from McDaniel, and he just has to pass the turn back. So Gerhart actually drew another Selesnya Charm. He's not going to play one just yet. He's going to hold on to one of those, play a Plains, and a 4/4 Elephant.
Smiter is such a huge threat. I mean, we're even seeing Smiter see play in Modern, so seeing it in Standard, it's got even less to compete with there. Lotleth Troll, though, doesn't take much work to have it become a big monster as well. I'm willing to throw away some land or some creatures. Are you willing to block?
Interesting question here.
I mean, the games are not all about card advantage. Card advantage is a factor in Magic, but Magic is also about other things, like life total, like tempo. If the Smiter blocks, Kyle could just discard 2 creatures and then regenerate the Troll, and that Smiter would be dead. Or if he wanted to, discard 3 and not worry about regenerating.
Abrupt Decay gonna take care of the Smiter here. So he did get in 2 points of damage. Gerhart gonna untap and draw, see what he's able to find. Looks like he may have drawn a God's Willing for the turn, not quite sure. I think that's interesting about green-white is even though it is a 2-color deck, its mana isn't great. You have to play a lot of basics, which is like a pretty nice thing. 9, 4, 7 Plains. And then you have 4 Temple Gardens, obviously, and then you have to play some number of Selesnya Guild Gates. How many is actually a pretty good question. As here's a Fleecemane Lion going to pass the turn back, leave up just 1 white mana. Gerhart, again, does have a copy of God's Willing in his hand. That is not a traditional card that sees play in Selesnya, so in comes Lotleth Troll.
Now, one of the things about, say, Craig Wesco's list from the Pro Tour Dragon's Maze, he only had 1 Guild Gate in his 2-color list, but he also was not, he was a little bit less skewed, I think, than this is, or pardon me, a little less even than this list is for white and green cards.
So what you saw is Gerhart blocks with a Fleecemane Lion, Lotleth Troll discards a card and is going to regenerate, and then Gerhart is going to cast God's Willing, give it protection from color, and scry 1, see if he can find a little bit more action. Being able to control your draw step in an aggro deck like this is actually pretty potent.
Yeah, I mean, it's not scry 2, but I mean, Magma Jet, that's a really good card.
Yeah.
God's Willing, certainly that selection matters. He put a card to the bottom, in for another 3, getting very, very close to making a monstrous lion.
So here's another Abrupt Decay. Again, Gerhart's hand right now is double Selesnya Charm and a Loxodon Smiter. Abrupt Decay is going to take care of that. Here is the big elephant. I'm going to pass the turn back.
And Kyle McDaniel, a 3-power Lotleth Troll. If history is any indication, he's probably going to march on in again.
Yeah, has not showed that he's not afraid to attack. Plays a Swamp for the turn. You see his hand right now, he has Polokronos, and he also has a Lifebane Zombie to go along with, I think, a Whip of Erebos in his hand, which is just a 1-of in his deck. So, again, you mentioned how you like that as a 1-of in black decks, and I'm with you. I think it's a very solid 1-of.
I mean, we talked a little bit about when you do a 2-of, and pretty much we both don't like it unless you are really somehow a whip deck. Now, Kyle McDaniel attacks Ryan and Gerhart here, and no blocks from Ryan. He just doesn't want to see his Smiter get knocked out by a couple of no mana activations from the Lotleth Troll.
Here's a Lifebane Zombie, going to show a hand of 2 Selesnya Charms, so nothing to take with that.
I feel like I kind of want to start making a Lifebane Zombie count as to how often it whiffs, even in the good matchups.
It is kind of funny that that card misses as much as it does. You see Gerhart drew an Advent of the Worm for the turn, a card that would be fantastic if he had access to another green mana, but he does not have one right now. It could actually shift things dramatically in this game. As it stands, doesn't really do a lot at this moment. So Smiter's going to come in, knock McDaniel down to 14, and Gerhart's just going to pass the turn back.
I mean, now, if I'm Kyle McDaniel sitting with a whip, that is just one of those cards that utterly changes around these matchups where you can get into a race so easily.
Yep.
There's the whip. Now he's got a 6 life swing that's going to happen. Total of a 12 life swing if you want to count the minus and the plus, the damage and the gain. We're almost at a position where we're... is there a second green? No.
He cannot cast it. As much as he'd like to, he's not allowed.
I was like, is one of those planes actually a secret forest? And so the take back sees he cannot play a spell illegally. So
yeah, just sitting with double Selesnya Charm, which aren't going to do very much right now. These creatures actually passing the Selesnya Charm test, excuse me, that's a mouthful, and a multitude of ways. I mean, can't use the exile ability. The +2/+2 isn't going to be very relevant right now, and then the 2/2 soldier can't block a Lifebane zombie, and can't really profitably block Lawless Troll.
Down
Plus
it comes.
The
Look
troll
at
gets
that.
trampled too.
That's the real knight. Reed
Yeah,
Duke.
that is the Duke. The one and only. So we'll see if Gerhart has any attacks again this turn. He did draw an Ajani Caller of the Pride. Not great in this particular situation because it's not a race that actually favors him. Now, one thing he can do is he can put a +1/+1 counter on his Locked In Inspired to make it a 5/5 to make it so that it can tussle with that Lotless Troll and actually make it so it has to stay on defense. That's not the worst place in the world to be.
One of the things to remember, that Lotleth Troll, you can see that die up to 1. That means there is a creature that has been discarded, so there is whip food.
Yeah, that's true.
I didn't see what was whipped.
I believe it was a Lifebane zombie.
Gotcha. Just not good enough to cast it.
Yeah. I mean, he was short on lands at that point, so he was happy enough to discard.
Okay. Ajani, the Advent of the Worm, and the other Selesnya Charm. That's all that Ryan Gerhart has right now.
Yeah, let's see what he wants to do with this. So there is the Ajani Caller of the Pride. See if he wants to put maybe the token on to the Reduke counter, or if he wants to put it on Smiter. We'll see exactly what he wants to do. As you see, Kyle McDaniel is going to take a look at it, so we'll bring up Ajani Caller of the Pride for you guys so you can see what that Planeswalker does. One that has not found the limelight just yet. We talk about Planeswalkers that go and start at 5 for their loyalty as a 3-mana one. Of course, we've seen Jace Beleren be able to do that. We see Ashiok doing that as well. This is another one that fits into that category.
One of the reasons I think that we haven't seen very much of Ajani in comparison to a lot of other cheap Planeswalkers is that first ability sometimes just has no targets in the early game, and then the other part of it is it doesn't really protect itself.
Yeah.
You know, an Ashiok going +2, it's surprising how that +2 matters a lot more, going from 3 to 5 instead of 4 to 5, because you can really keep somebody from catching up to it.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Ashiok protects itself by just going up from 3 to 5, which is a strange thing to say, but that's what it feels like a lot of the time.
I mean, I've sat there with my 2 power on the table going, ugh, what am I going to do? I can't let it sit there.
Yeah.
Okay, we see some mana.
Mutavault going to go active
Well, he's
here?
thinking about it.
I was thinking about sending the old Mutavault into the red zone.
Okay, in comes the zombie.
Looks like that's just going directly to the head here instead of to a Ajani.
There's not much life left.
Yeah. And now there's a Scavenging Ooze, which is a pretty nice draw. Only 1 activation available, but it can go to a 3/3 and gain some life. So let's see, what was the draw here for Gerhart this turn? Again, we know he has a Selesnya Charm. Looks like he drew another
Smiter?
Loxodon Smiter. Yeah.
If you're just joining us, there's a dead Smiter in the yard, a 5/5 Smiter on the table, being pumped up by that very glare-heavy Ajani that's hiding in the bottom. Another Smiter in Ryan Gerhart's hand, a Selesnya Charm in his hand, and an Advent of the Worm, which he cannot cast because he does not have a second green. Incidentally, I'm Adrian Sullivan.